Hi, good afternoon. The Senator and I are here to talk about Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and the future of the on-demand economy, which is made possible almost exclusively because of the invention of the smartphone and mobile technology. The Senator has a prop of the mobile technology that he helped to develop as a tech CEO before he became a senator.
Well, thank you, Derek. You're right. Since I was the co-founder of Nextel, I am the only speaker today that says, even when I'm speaking, leave your cell phones on. Doesn't bother me at all. But I did have a prop thinking, who would have thought this would have turned into this? And the fact of the matter is, as we think about the on-demand economy, without this and GPS, there would be no on-demand economy. So where technology leads us, as innovation comes about, we don't frankly know. It all obviously, in this issue, raises a host of policy issues, which we're going to get to. Yep. And let's have at it.
Let's dive right in. So the California Labor Commission had a ruling earlier this summer, much written about, that said that people who work for Uber, they are not contractors, they are employees. And this has helped to kick off a pretty feisty political debate between Republicans and Democrats about, how should we classify these people working for this new breed of company? Help us frame that question.
Well, first of all, I think anybody that thinks about this in the 20th century construct is kind of behind the times. And the idea that as we change the notion of work, as people might drive 10, 15 hours a month for Uber or Lyft, or rent out their apartment 3 times a month for Airbnb and do some work making stuff and sell it on Etsy. Are they a classic employee in any of those constructs? No, but the notion that they are simply all a 1099er doesn't fit as well. We really have two 20th century solutions for a 21st century definition of work. What I found, I just came back from the Valley in San Francisco, is that because of that decision, many of the platforms who were potentially reluctant to get engaged in the policy debate are now actually anxious to be involved. And what I found time and again is they've actually got regulatory constraints on trying out different models of social insurance. So one of the things that I hope to bring to the table is the idea of, could we get even a regulatory timeout so that those companies who want to think about social insurance, unemployment, workman's comp, disability, other attributes, could try them without trying to fall back in to 20th century reclassification debate. End of the day, I think we'll end up with a third classification. I think other countries have already done that. I don't think as policymakers that we're even ready to define what that third classification would look like.
So to get specific, some of the benefits that are not available to a contractor but are often inherent to a 20th century style employee: healthcare, unemployment insurance, pensions, 401k. How does public policy or technological platforms replace these things that seem to be going away on their own in parts of the economy?
Well, this is not something that's happened overnight. My dad's 90 this weekend, World War II veteran, worked 40 years in a company. Never made a lot of money, but he had a pension. He had a defined set of benefits. If we move from his generation to the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, we moved for 3 or 4 jobs. We went to 401k. We still had some package of benefits. The millennials, although many of the people in the on-demand economy are not just millennials, there are frankly a lot of boomers and others who got dislocated and have not come back into the established workforce. They're actually operating on this high wire, maybe doing well, but with nothing to catch them in between, because none of these social insurance programs have actually moved into the 21st century. What my premise is we're not going to replicate the 20th century model. It may not even be government-driven. It may be independent third parties that will offer some of these. But the idea that you can go from here down to when the stuff hits the fan, as it always does, to here being back on the government dime in terms of social responsibility, that's a free rider problem on all taxpayers. And I think we can actually frame this debate in a conservative way that says we've got to try some kind of joint contribution models in between. What does it look like? Could it be an exchange model? And by the way, most of this on-demand economy would not have happened had there not been the ACA, because the severance of health insurance and employment has allowed a lot of people to take this plunge into the on-demand economy. And I should quickly add as well that simply being a W-2 employee doesn't guarantee you success anymore, because with algorithmic modeling, there's a lot of folks who get that 28 or 29 hours, but never get the full benefits of being an employee because of, again, advent of technology. But could there be an exchange model where you shop for your benefits? Could we look at an hour bank model, which was the old building trades unions? If you were a carpenter and you worked for 10 different firms, and each time you worked for a firm, both sides would jointly contribute into a social welfare fund. It wasn't run by the government. In the 20th century, it was run by the unions. It may be run by a trusted third party that might be an association, something different in the 21st century. One of the things that we teased out a little bit last week in San Francisco was, could you even have a consumer-driven model? When you are hosted by somebody at Airbnb, or you do some work as a TaskRabbit, or you ride with a Lyft car, could you actually give a gratuity that might be matched by the platform that would go into a social insurance fund that would take care of folks? I don't think we know yet, but what the court decision drove in California was the threat that this innovation could be squashed by a top-down regulatory ruling has made all of these entities willing to try out new policy ideas. That's good. Two, we've got to find the regulatory time out to allow some of these platforms to try some of these models before we end up with a one-size-fits-all legislative solution.
I want to talk a bit about part-time work specifically. There was a study done of Uber drivers, and it was done by an economist, Alan Kruger, and Uber. It found that of people who are driving for the company, 80% of them had a full-time job before they joined Uber. And then working for Uber, only 31% had a full-time job, which suggests, and again, it's just one study and Uber was a participant in it, but suggests to me that there's a lot of people who are willingly trading full-time work for the flexibility of piecing together gigs, part-time work, a little bit of freelance. What do you see that makes you do you think this could be a future model for work?
I think it very much could be a future model, but first of all, we don't have good data. The last time the Bureau of Labor Statistics looked at the contingent workforce in a major way was 2005. That was as much value as if it had been in 1985, because the world is so dramatically changed. Second, we've got to get all of these platforms, and with BLS under sequestration challenges, the notion that we're going to get the government to figure this totally out, we're going to have to get a lot of these platforms to share data so we can size this workforce. One thing we do know, it's growing rapidly, and whether it's at a low of 3 million or McKinsey said 53 million, that's a big delta. We've got to figure it out. Second is that there are a number of folks who are cobbling together a variety of different revenue streams to create a full workforce. And what I've found, and I've done a series of these roundtables around Virginia, and this is not just millennials. I think about a session I had in Roanoke where more of the folks that were sitting around the table were my age rather than millennials. To a person, they would not go back to a traditional 9-to-5 for their same revenue stream. I would test them, and every time I did this, it took 35 to 40% increase in pay for somebody to be willing to trade back in to a normal job. And as policymakers, we've never been able to put a real value from a policy perspective on flexibility. We all complain about the hurried nature of today's world, but a lot of people, I think, Derek, you're right, are trading in for this flexibility. What we want to do, though, what I want to do is allow this innovation to take place, allow this flexibility and freedom to take place, but not create such a free rider problem that people who are doing well, again, if they hit a bump, end up back upon government benefits only because we created no social insurance jointly contributing in the interim.
I want to talk about the relationship between Obamacare and the on-demand economy. And Obamacare and entrepreneurship, I think, is really interesting because on the one hand, you have all these accusations that says, look, you're socializing medicine, you're socializing healthcare. This is obviously bad for capitalism. And yet there's a couple studies that seem to suggest that that universal healthcare actually encourages entrepreneurs to start off on their own, because when healthcare isn't tied into work, then if you do something and lose your job, or do something and it doesn't work out, you're not losing health care. You still have that, because that's provided by the government no matter what. Can you make that case?
I know there are a lot of folks in my day job who are still trying to relitigate this. But this issue is yesterday's. We got to fix it. You know, we shouldn't have cliffs like a 30-hour cliff. We actually have a cheaper plan. I've got what actually we called a copper plan that would be cheaper than bronze in terms of a lower value, a lower actuarial value. But this ability to detach benefits from employment, which, let's face it, all started post-World War II, has allowed enormous growth of entrepreneurship. Now we have to think about the next set of benefits and how they fit into this framework. The other issue, and again, your piece on work, where it's headed, one of the challenges, and I sit here as a proud capitalist, but we got to recognize as well that modern American capitalism, with its focus on short-termism, I would argue is actually destroying capitalism, destroying the ability to create long-term value, and in many ways, it is not working for a whole slew of low and moderate income Americans. 60% of Americans, if they got hit with a $500 bill, would have to go into debt or declare bankruptcy. We have to rethink not only this social contract in the nature of work, but I hope, idealistically, we could find a way that capitalism could help solve some of this problem so we don't end up with simply a government redistribution model, or for that matter, the old Adam Smith, the unfettered hand of capitalism is going to fix it all. What's cool as well, I know our time is gone, is both of these issues, if we do them right, don't have to fit into the left versus right, Republican versus Democratic model. If we can make them a future past, what a way to spur up an otherwise pretty stale political debate.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.